My name's Caroline Poynton. I'm recording this off YouTube today because this is a bit about I think it's about adoption or something. It sounds a bit like adoption, and to be honest with myself, if Keir Starmer's really meaning something with this for once in his damn life, trying to do the right thing, then try and do the right thing, mate, and try and help a mother like me. Innit?
Mr. Speaker, what happened to them and to tens of thousands of mothers, children and families should never have happened. It is a stain on our history. Mothers, many young, vulnerable and without support, were coerced, bullied or misled into feeling that they had no choice but to have their children taken away from them. What a thing to do. And Mr. Speaker, these were not isolated or accidental acts. They were practices embedded within systems across local authorities, across voluntary and faith-based institutions, and in health and social care services, including parts of what is now the
been ruined enough by the authority already.
All institutions that operated with power over people's lives.
As if they didn't ruin my child life.
Yet they did so without compassion, without consent, and without dignity or proper safety.
Now ruining my adulthood.
Mr. Speaker, these practices were particularly prevalent between 1949 and 1976, but also extended beyond those years.
I love her and she needs to be seen.
In some cases, women, including those placed in mother and baby homes and other institutional settings, were cut off from their families, relationships, education and employment, and subjected to harsh and isolated conditions. Some experienced treatment that amounted to exploitation and abuse. Mr. Speaker, many were made to feel ashamed, and that came through very, very powerfully in the discussions I had this morning. Silenced and unworthy of care or dignity. Children grew up believing that they were unwanted.
Yeah. Like I am.
Young mothers were told that they were immoral, that their babies would be better off without them.
Well, I know Sarah Jane's not better off without me.
Again, as they told me this morning, that lasts a lifetime.
I've never give up on that
has a huge impact. Anne Lloyd Keane, here in the gallery,
and I am right.
House, described to the Education Committee how she was stitched without anaesthetic. And said,
all right, let me go through that part.
She was told,
in that way, thank God.
You will remember the pain because you've been a bad girl.
I'll remember the pain when they don't.
Just to speak, many of those harmed in this way feel
and I remember the pain that I don't get to see her every night. I remember the pain that I don't know how she is.
And that she still feels it today. And I know that this apology will not be able to lift that completely. It will help a little.
Someone going through all of that pain and all of that stress, which is quite.
Today I say to Anne, to everyone here in the gallery with us, to all those impacted and affected, wherever they are in the country.
Yeah, well, I've been
many thousands of them, including some who still have not been able to speak about what happened to them to this day.
Well, Sarah Jane's going to be in the same situation.
Perhaps give some of them the confidence,
and I've got the confidence
to speak about what happened to them, because it will help in a small way.
Well, it will help, because I have confidence to tell you, mate, go get Sarah Jane, get I don't care, get it together, get this sorted with social services for themselves.
Ours.
Yeah, the shame is yours.
And I say that on behalf of the whole country. I say it to every single person impacted.
Start trying to prevent some of this then.
Sorry.
No, you're not sorry. I'll tell you when you're sorry is when you help mothers like me then.
We
can't change what's happened in the past, but what we can do is change the future to stop it carrying on.
To those who are not given the information they needed.
That's what you can do to make you sorry, proper sorry.
Who faced pressure or coercion.
Not just a word.
And to experience practices that were unethical.
Start making that sorry into actual sorry.
The sons and daughters, the children who are now adults, who through pressure and coercion
and Sarah Jane's going to be an adult, going through the same thing.
Denied
so
their
am I
identity,
as a mother.
their history.
Being denied our history.
Their safety.
Well,
to
lucky
those who grew up
enough, I
believing
found most
that
of
they
my
were
history
unwanted,
about my family case,
some of whom were
Sharma.
even told directly that they were second class.
We're not second
To
class,
those
we
who
are first
carry
fucking
a
class,
burden
me and
of
my
loss,
daughter,
confusion and
thank you.
stigma,
We're full
or
fucking
who
pedigree,
experience
full
neglect and
English.
abuse
So that means
without
we're
the
first
protection
class.
or oversight that should have been their right.
And
To
it is
those
my
who've
right.
experienced
And
lifelong
it should be
uncertainty,
my right.
loss, or questions
So
about
I have to be able to
identity
fight
and
this
belonging,
back.
or whose mental and physical health,
If they're saying what you're saying now, mate, I should be able to
and sense
fight
of
this back
self
from
across their
adoption
lives
services.
has been affected.
Because Sarah Jane's life
The
is being
fathers who are denied a
affected.
voice, excluded from decisions, or separated from their children.
And the
To the
same as a mother,
siblings,
me.
grandparents,
Yeah, be
partners, and
separated from my
extended family,
girl. Not
and
having
future generations who've lived
anything. No
with the
say, no
consequences
rights,
of
no
these
nothing.
practices. To those who experienced harm from these practices, even while being
And we can
brought up
prevent
in
this
loving
by
homes
starting by
their adopted
they can
parents.
prevent this by starting to help
To
someone
those
like
who are
me.
adopted across borders or
Adopted,
cultures,
yeah. There we
who
are.
lost connections to
Lost connection to the families. That's what I mean. This is what I'm going through with Sarah Jane right now. In today's day. In real time. Today's time. So let's see what Keir Starmer is going to say to try and start trying to prevent this from happening. Because if that's the case, then I think I've got a right to jump on the bandwagon with this one. Because my little girl's been falsely, wrongly adopted. Well, I'm going to say falsely, wrongly forced adoption. Because they were lying and other things. And I was on my own trying to fend for myself and my little girl. And they knew that. They knew that I'd been in care and been groomed out to be a prostitute or anything else. But lucky enough for me, thank God, that I never touched hardcore drugs or anything and I'm perfectly okay. Well, I'm not perfectly alright, but yeah, I'm okay in other ways. And for what they're saying here, I'm scared because I've been in care since I was, well, all my life in and out of care, but I've been in care when I was 10. I had 33 foster homes, 13 children's homes, 6 high schools, 2 secure units. On the street, 13 in Manchester, prostituting myself out to God knows who. And thank God no one ever murdered me or did anything severely badly. And thank God nobody ever raped me seriously like that. Not in a... I mean, yeah, we'll call it abuse, but I wouldn't really say as rape to myself. I'd call it more abuse than rape. That's what I would say to myself. That's what I class it was. I was being abused by the system. And that's what could now happen to Sarah Jane. She's 12. And it doesn't need to happen to Sarah Jane when she's got a perfectly good mother that loves her. I'm not saying I don't need help. Yeah, everybody needs help. Of course I need some help. And of course things ain't going to be easy or it wasn't going to be easy or whatever. But it didn't mean they had to adopt my little girl and take my little girl away from me completely. Take her away from her mother completely. Take her away. At 2 years old. And every night she slept next to me. Every single night. The minute she was born, she was on my chest and I never let her go. I was in hospital a week with her and I never put her down. Well, when I got to see her because she was in an incubator. And they did that.
a heritage, racial and personal identity.
Yeah. trying to raise our identity. I lost my dad. Yeah, my dad. I got to see my dad in his bloody coffin. I got to spend, thank God, a year with my granddad. But a year wasn't long enough, considering I could have had my whole life with my granddad.
Who've experienced lifelong uncertainty, loss, or questions about identity and belonging, or whose mental and physical health, relationships, and sense of self.
And that's what they've done to me, isn't it? Trying to give me mental and physical fucking health problems, They caused it, and then they caused me fucking coronavirus vaccine injection as well. More fucking physical problems. Never mind mental health problems. Physical problems. Ones that I've never experienced in my flipping life. I tell you, do you know, I regret something in my life. Not going on the streets or anything like that, because I was a child and things, and yeah, little things I regret, you know, but the worst thing I ever regret doing to myself is having them vaccines. I wish I never had that second vaccine for myself. I regret that. I do. And then I regret the fact that I wish I was stronger at the time to be able to fight for Sarah Jane. But I wasn't strong enough. I didn't know all these things then. I wish I knew all what I know now, because maybe they wouldn't have adopted her. Or whatever, but I didn't know all that. I didn't know all these things, what I do now. I wouldn't have probably known half of these things if it weren't for this anyway.
Across their lives.
If it weren't for what they did to me, Sarah Jane, I probably wouldn't know half these things.
Been affected. To the fathers who faced pressure or coercion and who experienced practices that were unethical. To the sons and daughters, the children who are now adults, who through pressure and coercion within these systems were taken from their families, denied their identity, their history, and sometimes their safety. To those who grew up believing that they were unwanted, some of whom were even told directly that they were second class. To those who've carried a burden of loss, confusion and stigma, or who experienced neglect and abuse without the protection or oversight that should have been their right. To those who've experienced lifelong uncertainty, loss, or questions about identity and belonging, or whose mental and physical health, relationships and sense of self across their lives has been affected.
Carry it on, Well,
to the fathers who are denied a voice, excluded from decisions, or separated from their children.
Still carrying on
to the siblings, grandparents, partners and extended family, and future generations who've lived with the consequences of these practices.
Right now, today's date.
To those who experienced harm from these practices, even while being brought up in loving homes by their adopted parents. To those who are adopted across borders or cultures, who lost connections to their heritage, racial and personal identity. And to those from ethnic minority backgrounds who experienced racism or were treated differently within these systems, and who, as a group, were less likely to be adopted or to grow up in stable family homes. Mr. Speaker, I'm struck by the words of Debbie Irumli, who I met this morning.
So it's badly in our ways.
She says she was raised with racist views towards her own biological family. Mr. Speaker, how do you even begin to comprehend that? To each and every one of those affected, we say a deep and heartfelt sorry.
Mummy was a waste of space, she didn't love you.
And Mr. Speaker, let me be clear and unequivocal. These harms were compounded by the actions and failures of the state.
She was a failure too.
Governments funded, enabled and relied on systems that were not consistently or effectively overseen. The state did not prevent harm from continuing. The state bears responsibility for the systems it funded and legitimised, which enabled these practices to occur.
They're wrong.
The state did not do enough to protect mothers, children
mothers
and families
like me
from harm.
and my little girl
And
like
for
me.
this systemic failure,
See, they're not doing
I am
enough to
truly
protect people
sorry.
like me and Sarah Jane.
Mr. Speaker, many of those affected have suffered a further injustice.
They're still
They've
suffering
had to
right now,
fight
yeah.
for the basic human right to know their own story. As
Yeah.
Sally Ells has put it, we are treated as if the information about our own lives
Yeah.
does not belong
You got
to
paid
us.
for that, yeah.
Debbie was told her birth mother's life would be in danger if she tried to search for her.
Yeah, that's what
Barriers
they say
put
to
in
Sarah
place at
Jane, is
every
it then?
twist and turn.
Yeah, twisting and turning.
Records
She won't
have in
miss the
some
time,
cases
yeah.
been lost, altered,
Yeah.
or not made fully accessible to those seeking answers.
Yeah, well that's what they're
And
doing
the
now,
whole
still
process
doing
is
it now,
painfully
aren't they?
slow, traumatic,
I
and
mean, this might be
dehumanising.
talking about 20
all
years
over
ago or
again.
something, but it's still going on today.
Mr. Speaker, we do say sorry.
No, don't say
And we mean
sorry.
it.
Do something about
But
it.
sorry is not enough.
Exactly.
This must also be the start
Of
of
change.
real change.
Go and
Working
get
with
my little
those
girl
affected
start
and their
with that
families
one.
to improve access to records and to provide
No,
the care and
not
support
access. I
that
want
people need.
access to my little girl
So today, at
and
Eccleston
her
House,
life.
we will fund the development of a national online resource, creating a single
As a
access point
person,
to
as a
locate
mother.
records wherever they may be held across the country. We will consult on requiring existing records to be retained for 100 years, so they will remain available across the lifetime of those affected.
And
my
it doesn't
right honourable
matter who
friend,
the parents
Education
are, the
Secretary,
murderers,
is
the
today
people
writing
in
to
the
local
world.
authorities,
And
regional
they-
adoption
they-
agencies
they've
and
just
voluntary
let's say,
adoption
oh.
agencies, setting out the expectation that requests for records should be
Oh,
responded to
fucking can't think of
swiftly
a
and
woman
with
that's a
compassion
sick girl
and
in jail or whatever,
consistency.
in jail or whatever.
And we
Who's had
will
a baby or
expand
whatever, it has to be
access to funded
adopted.
intermediary services with
That
particular
child
focus on
still has the right to
pre-1976
know who her
cases
parents
where
are
access
or
to
were.
support is currently most limited. We will establish national virtual peer
Sarah Jane has a
support groups
right.
for
I
mothers
have
and
a
adopted
right.
adults to improve
I should
access
have
to
rights to be
ongoing
in my little girl's
trauma-informed
life.
support across the country. And we will work with NHS England to ensure those affected are taken seriously when they seek help.
Right.
This includes new support for clinicians to better understand the impact of forced adoption
Forced
and respond
adoption, here we
appropriately.
go. That's what
in
I've
their
said
care.
about me, Sarah Jane.
The
That's
NHS
the
England
same
will
now
also
what's
explore
going
how
on
those
now.
who wish to do so
Well, how can
can
you
have their
understand if
experience
you
of
still
forced
carry
adoption
it on?
appropriately recorded in their health record. And finally, to further recognise those affected and ensure we learn
Because
the
I'm not on
lessons
enough
of the
drugs or
past,
anything.
we will commission
for
a
them to say
testimonials
anything.
project to capture the stories of those with
And they
experience
never
of
have
historic forced adoption practices. Through all of
My
this and
criminal
more, we
record's
will
not
continue
enough
to
for them
meet
to say, oh,
regularly
you can't look
with
after your
those
little
with
girl.
lived
There's nothing
experience.
there about
Guided
children.
by
There's
them
nothing there
to
about
get this
abuse to
support
anyone.
right, to learn from our past,
Mine
and
was
ensure that
basically
nothing like this can ever happen
criminal
in this
damage.
country again.
theft. A bit of fraud a long
Finally,
time
Mr.
before
Speaker,
when I was
this
younger.
national apology
To
reflects
regret
and
doing it,
builds on the
regret doing that,
approaches taken by Scotland and
Bridge
Wales,
to the peace, a
whose
bit of
devolved
conflict
governments
disorder.
have also issued apologies for these practices, which we fully endorse. And I welcome the process
Well,
underway
that
in
isn't
Northern
enough for
Ireland
them to say,
to
oh,
establish
we'll
a
adopt a
statutory
little
public
girl.
inquiry
Falsely, wrongly,
into
see?
mother and baby institutions,
So, yeah.
Michael
Well,
and
that's what it was,
laundries and
forced
workhouses.
adoption, I'm correct.
I also want to thank the Joint Committee on Human Rights and the Education
And what about my
Subcommittee
human rights?
for all they've
And
done to
Sarah
shine a
Jane's
light
human
on
rights?
this injustice.
What about her child rights and my human
But
rights
most
as
of
a
all, I
mother?
want to thank those who have campaigned for so long to have the truth
That you took
recognised.
my rights away to be a mother,
Including
but
those
yet
who
they're
are
still
no longer
charging me
with
child
us,
maintenance
to hear this
for my
apology
boys,
that they
which
fought
one's
for.
24 nearly and one's 19.
It should
18.
never have happened. And you should not have had to fight so hard.
Yeah, well I shouldn't
for
have to
this
fight,
day
should
to
I?
come.
So hard.
But today, finally, I do say on behalf of the state and on behalf of the nation as a whole, we see you, we hear you,
Right, do you?
and we are truly sorry.
No, you're not. If you hear me,
I
then
commend
you
the
better, they
statement
better
of
go and
the
get
House
Sarah
Justice.
Jane back. If they hear, I should be writing to this, because if they hear and they are sorry, then I think that they need to start meaning the sorriness and start helping a mother like me then, don't they? Seriously, actually, seriously. Quite frankly.
On July the 1st, 2026, Princess Diana would have turned 65 years old. It is a birthday she never reached, a milestone the nation quietly carried for her. And in the days leading up to it, Prince William did something.
Oh.
On July the 1st, 2026, Princess Diana would have turned 65 years old. It is a birthday she never reached,
Oh, yeah,
a milestone the nation
64.
quietly carried for her.
65.
And in the
64.
days leading up to it, Prince William
Oh,
did
69,
something that
Mum.
very few people expected. He did not
Same
release
age,
a
Mum's
grand
16th of
statement.
July.
He did not stage a public ceremony for the cameras. He did something smaller, quieter, and far more personal. And when the details began to surface, they moved a country that thought it had no tears left for Diana. This is not a story about a press release. It is a story about a son who has spent nearly 30 years learning how to grieve in public while protecting something private. And on his mother's 65th birthday, he made a choice about how she would be remembered and who would carry her forward. Here is what happened. This moment is not just a personal tribute from a grieving son. It touches the emotional centre of the entire monarchy.
You know, the first time
Diana was
all
never
together.
only William's
William and
mother.
Harry,
She was the most beloved royal of her
Yeah.
generation, a woman who reshaped what the public expected the
Yeah.
crown to feel like. How her memory is handled is a question of institutional importance, because the monarchy's relationship with Diana has always been complicated, careful, and at times deeply painful. What William did on her 65th birthday quietly answered a question the palace has avoided for years. Who decides how Diana is remembered now? And the answer, it turns out, is no longer the institution. It is her son. To understand why this gesture struck so deeply, we will look at 4 things. First, the weight of the date itself, and why a 65th birthday carries a different kind of grief. Second, the long history of how William has chosen to honour his mother, and what makes this year different. Third, the gesture itself, broken down piece by piece, including the detail involving Princess Charlotte that left observers in tears. And finally, what this quiet decision means for Diana's legacy, and for the next generation that will carry her name. Diana, Princess of Wales, was born on July the 1st, 1961, at Park House in Norfolk. She died on August 31st, 1997, at just 36 years old. William was 15. Harry was 12. The image of those 2 boys walking behind her coffin remains one of the most haunting moments in modern British history. Diana is buried on a small island in the middle of an ornamental lake at Althorpe, the Spencer family estate in Northamptonshire. The location was chosen by her brother, Charles Spencer, who worried that a public grave would be overwhelmed by visitors. The island is private. It is surrounded by water and trees. For nearly 3 decades, it has remained one of the few places connected to Diana that the public cannot reach and that the palace cannot manage. To understand why the country still mourns her so openly, it helps to remember what she actually changed. Diana walked through an active landmine field in Angola in 1997 to force the world to look at a problem governments ignored. She shook the hand of a man dying of AIDS at a time when fear and stigma told people not to touch. She brought her young sons to homeless shelters and hospital wards, insisting they see the people the rest of the establishment looked past. She did not simply attend causes. She redefined what royal compassion was allowed to look like, and she did it in a family that often valued restraint over feeling. That is the inheritance William received. Not a title, but a way of moving through the world. A 65th birthday carries its own particular ache. It is the age of retirement, of becoming a grandmother in the ordinary rhythm of life. It is the version of Diana the country never got to meet, the silver-haired campaigner, the doting grandmother to George, Charlotte, and Louis, the elder stateswoman of a family she helped to humanize. Every milestone she misses is a fresh reminder of everything that was taken. William has never been quiet about his grief, but he has always been deliberate about it. In recent years, he has marked his mother's memory in ways that feel chosen rather than performed. On Mother's Day, as reported by Hello magazine, he shared a previously unseen photograph of Diana crouched in a field of flowers, holding his small hand, captioned simply, "Remembering my mother, today and every day." Through his Homewards project, he has carried forward her work on homelessness, the same cause she introduced him to as a child, when she brought him and Harry to shelters to meet people the world preferred to ignore. Royal biographer Robert Jobson, who has written extensively about the prince, has long observed that William is determined his children grow up knowing who their grandmother truly was, not as a headline,
good.
but as family. That determination
hope
has shaped
William
almost
has got-
every
I
choice
hope
he's
William
made
has
about
not changed his
Diana's
religion,
memory.
Princess
And this year
Diana.
it shaped the most personal
He's
one
Christian,
yet.
he's not Muslim,
According to
he's
sources
Christian.
familiar with the family's plans, William approached this birthday differently
it's
than
not-
any before it. And the way it
doesn't mean I'm not
unfolded
against
came in
anybody.
three parts.
It
The
means
first
he's
concerns the
Christian,
visit.
this is our land,
Sources
this is
close
land.
to the household suggest that
Because
rather than
people
mark the
can't
day with a
live it.
public appearance, William chose to make a private journey
Well, they've
to
got to abide
Alford.
by the law of
While there
land
is
of
no
our
official
land.
confirmation of the visit,
And we're not
those
what we're
familiar
having.
with the family say he wanted to stand
William,
at the
we
one
don't
place that has
want this
always been
takeover, William.
hers alone,
William,
away
listen, man,
from
don't
cameras,
not want what
away
they've really got
from the
going on.
institution, on the island where she
We need to
rests.
get these people
For a man
involved,
whose
William.
entire life has been lived under observation, choosing
I hope he
privacy
will. I hope
was
William will
itself
listen to
the
the
statement.
people. I hope he
But the
does.
visit was not the
I really
only thing
do.
that
I hope
happened.
King
The
Charles
second
gets
revelation is about who he brought into the moment. An insider told a royal publication that
Why
this
will
year
King Charles
William wanted
step
his
down
children to understand who
and let
their
William
grandmother
take
truly
over?
was, not the icon on
I'm sure
magazine
he's ready
covers,
now to take
but the woman
over.
who would have adored them. He has reportedly begun sharing her story with George, Charlotte, and Louis in a deliberate way, turning grief into inheritance. Sources say he has been showing them photographs, telling them small, ordinary memories,
Because
the
he'll
kind a
bring
mother
back-
leaves
he'll bring
behind
back the
that
memories
no
that
biography
he left
records.
behind,
And then
that
comes the
Princess
third
Diana left
part, the
behind.
detail
Oh,
that broke through.
That's what I mean.
According to reports, the moment
Charles
that
won't
moved
do
observers most involved Princess Charlotte. Now 11 years
William
old,
will
Charlotte
bring
carries
back
Diana's
Princess
name,
Diana's
and
memories.
increasingly those close to the family say something of her warmth. It is reported that William spoke with his daughter about the grandmother she shares a name with, and that Charlotte has begun to ask the kind of questions that only a child reaching toward a lost story can ask.
The opposite way to
One
the
source
people. Walk
described
with
it
the
as William
people.
handing his daughter not just a memory,
When
but a
King Charles
responsibility.
walking
The girl
opposite way
named for
to
Diana
everyone.
is old enough now to begin carrying her. To
I know, he's in
understand
another
why this
world.
lands
Yeah.
so hard,
Yeah.
picture the contrast. For most of his
Picture
life,
the
William's
contrast.
grief was something the world demanded to see.
Yeah.
He was 15 years old when he was asked to walk behind
So
his
I was
mother's
15,
coffin
yeah.
while millions watched, a decision he has since said
Just
no
turned
child
15.
should ever have to make.
Yeah,
His
it's a lot,
mourning
yeah.
was public property. The institution decided how it looked.
I remember
This
because
year,
I was
the
writing-
dynamic reversed. There was no procession arranged for the public, no official portrait staged for approval. There was a father, his daughter, and the memory of a woman neither the cameras nor the palace could claim. William has spoken before about wanting his children to know Diana as
Yeah,
a person,
and she is
saying he
behind
talks
her.
about
And
Granny
really do
Diana
live here.
with them and keeps her
up to there
present
with the
in their
country.
home. On her
And the little
65th
girl and
birthday,
the rest
that
of
quiet
the-
promise
obviously
became
William and
something
Harry
visible.
and the
The woman
grandchildren,
who once
isn't it?
said she wanted to
Obviously
be a
they're all
queen
family.
of people's hearts is being remembered,
I was gonna
not
say,
by an
and she's
institution
with the
issuing a
country, the
statement,
people.
but by a son teaching his children her name. There is real emotional
like
weight
myself
in
that are
that,
suffering
the
in
sense
a
of a
way.
circle slowly
In a bad
closing.
way.
Diana raised
Sad
William to
day.
feel things openly in a family that often did not. Now, William is raising Charlotte to carry a grandmother she will never meet. The grief did not end. It simply found somewhere new to live. What this means going forward is bigger than a single birthday. For nearly 30
What it means
years,
going
the question
forward
of how
is
Diana should be
hopefully,
remembered
yeah,
has belonged,
is
at
she
least in part,
Christian?
to the institution
Diana,
she both
that
elevated
William is
and
Christian, and this is the
unsettled.
way the country
That
stays.
is changing. Her memory is
Christian.
passing into the hands of the children and grandchildren who knew her only through her son's quiet insistence that she not be forgotten. A 65th birthday she never reached has become a kind of turning point. Diana will not grow old, but the little girl who carries her name is growing up, and somewhere in that ordinary fact lies the strange comfort of how the people we lose continue to live. Not in monuments, not in statements, in a child learning for the first time the name she was given and the woman who once wore it.
Oh, Princess Diana.
I've come to the conclusion
Oh,
that really it would have been
God.
far easier to have had two wives.
Yeah, that's why you did have two wives, mate. Twat.
I've come to the conclusion that really it would have been far easier to have had two wives.
Why would someone say that on the red night? Oh, on the wedding night? Why would someone say that? It'd be easier to have two wives. Why would you say that? That's funny. I'm gonna joke, mate. I'd be miffed if you even thought like that. I'd be miffed if you even thought about having another wife. Good God. See, Cockle, you did have 2 wives, didn't you? Didn't Yeah. Artist, liar he is. We will go eventually. King Charles 5 years ago, yeah, he was fucking doomed then, he's doomed now. He fucking is. Doomed old. Doomo. He's a fucking doomer, alright, isn't he? He is. He's a fucking traitor. Traitor. Andy fucking Bourbon. 9 days ago. Yeah. It was a bit longer ago. We are talking about King Charles as well. Oh, Princess Charlotte.
I'm 75 now, and
yeah, we'll fucking get
I can't remember anybody except the Queen Bee.
The state banquet was supposed to be a night of polished smiles, glittering protocol, and royal unity. But in one silent instant, Princess Catherine saw the brooch on Camilla's gown, and the entire room changed. It was Diana's brooch. Not similar, not symbolic. The very piece Catherine believed should never have been worn without meaning, permission, or respect. And then Catherine did the unthinkable. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Catherine did not blink. She did not turn away. For a few seconds, the princess sat perfectly still, as if her whole body had understood the shock before her voice could carry it. Across the table, Camilla felt the stare land on her, sharp and unmistakable, and the queen consort's fingers moved toward the brooch almost by instinct. William noticed the movement first. The prince looked from his wife to the jewel, and something inside him hardened. This was not a simple ornament. This was memory, pinned to silk. This was grief, placed in public view. The banquet mattered, because it was not a normal dinner. A state banquet is a formal royal meal, held for important guests from another country, meant to show friendship, power, and national dignity. Charles had wanted this evening to look calm. The king needed unity after weeks of private strain, and he needed the room to believe the family still moved as one. Catherine knew that too. She understood the cost of breaking the rhythm of royal ceremony, but she also understood what silence would cost. If she said nothing, Diana's name would once again be swallowed by protocol.
By her.
William slowly reached for Catherine's hand beneath the table, not to stop her, but to steady her. She felt his touch and pulled back gently. That tiny movement told him everything. The princess was not acting from temper. She was acting from pain. Camilla looked down, then up again, and her face changed, because she knew Catherine had recognized the brooch instantly. Charles saw it as well.
Camilla.
The monarch's expression tightened, and for the first time that evening, his careful control began to crack. The room kept breathing, but barely. Catherine rose from her chair, and the quiet became dangerous. Servers paused. Guests looked toward the head table. William stood half a second later, close enough to show support, far enough to let her speak for herself. Then the princess gave the order that no one expected. She asked for the service to stop.
That was from
Camilla
Princess
froze.
Diana to Kate.
Charles looked from Catherine to the queen consort, and the king understood the damage was already
Princess
done.
Catherine,
This was no small breach of etiquette. This was Diana's shadow returning through the one symbol no one had the right to use carelessly. And before the room could understand why Catherine had stopped everything, the people closest to Diana's legacy began revealing exactly what was at stake. In that room, the brooch did not mean the same thing to everyone. To Camilla, it was a symbol of royal acceptance. To Charles, it was a dangerous reminder of a past he had never fully escaped. To William, it was his mother's shadow returning at the worst possible moment. And to Catherine, it was a line crossed in public, under chandeliers, before the world. Catherine held herself still, but the pain had already reached her face. She had spent years honoring Diana's memory with care, never turning it into a weapon, never using it for attention, never allowing grief to become a performance. That was why the moment
From
hurt so
Princess Diana when
deeply.
she becomes
Diana
the
was
queen.
not just a name from the past. She was William's mother, the woman
Yeah.
whose absence still shaped his silence,
And
his
she was a
caution,
witch,
and the way he
what,
protected his family.
King Charles.
William saw the brooch,
Yeah,
and his jaw
probably
tightened.
changed all 'cause of
The
her,
prince
the
had
witch.
always guarded anything connected to Diana with quiet intensity,
Yeah.
especially pieces that carried public meaning.
Yeah.
To him, royal jewelry was never only decoration. A brooch, in palace language, could become a message, and this one carried a wound. A royal state event, a formal
And that
gathering
was
where
the
the family
crazy
represents the
brooch.
country before guests and diplomats, was meant to show unity. But this single
was from
object had
Princess
turned
Diana
unity
to
into
Gaeta.
something painful. Camilla tried to keep her composure. She lifted her chin, held her posture, and acted as if nothing had changed. But her hand betrayed her. The queen consort touched the brooch once, then quickly lowered her fingers,
And Queen Elizabeth
as if she had
was
suddenly
very
realized that every eye near the table had followed the movement.
Queen Elizabeth
She had
was
wanted
happy,
acceptance. She had wanted the
I don't think
jewel
she
to
would
say
be.
that old
I
pain
do
had
that
been
to
healed.
Princess Gaeta.
Instead, it said something colder. It said that someone else's grief had been borrowed without consent. Charles
The Queen
shifted in
adored
his seat,
Princess Gaeta.
and the king's discomfort became
does.
impossible
She
to
adored
miss.
Gaeta.
He knew the brooch
Out
was
of all
tied
of
to
them, the
private
Queen
conversations
adored
that had
Princess
already
Gaeta.
divided the family behind closed doors. He also knew Catherine was not the
Not
kind
that
of woman who challenged ceremony without cause. The monarch looked toward William, then toward Camilla, and his face carried the burden of a past returning at the exact moment he needed control. Catherine felt sadness first, then shock, then something stronger. She looked at William
Is it to
and
tell her
understood
to
he
get
had
off,
seen
to
exactly
take that
what she
brooch
had
off her?
seen. The
To
prince
Princess
did not
Diana.
need to speak. His silence was full of hurt, and his hurt gave her the courage to remain standing, inside a room that expected her to sit down and smile. Sophie noticed the change before others understood it. The trusted confidant leaned gently toward Catherine, her voice low, controlled, and heavy with warning.
King Charles.
She whispered that this was not the first time the brooch had caused alarm. Catherine did not answer, but her eyes changed. William saw it. Charles saw it. Camilla felt it. That whisper pulled the story backward to the hidden moment that made Catherine's reaction inevitable. This did not begin at the banquet table. It began weeks earlier, inside a private family ceremony where Diana's personal pieces were reviewed for a future memorial tribute. Catherine had asked for one thing only, that the brooch remain untouched until William decided its place. But during that quiet ceremony, Camilla made a request that turned a private memory into a royal fault line. Catherine remembered the day with painful clarity. The gathering at Kensington had been small, quiet, and guarded from outside noise. A memorial tribute, a planned public act meant to honor someone's life and legacy, was being discussed for Diana, and every detail carried emotional weight. William had entered that meeting already tense, because anything connected to his mother was never just history to him. It was childhood. It was loss. It was the wound behind the royal smile. Sophie had sat close to Catherine, watching every movement with the careful calm of someone who understood the family's hidden pressure. The trusted confidant knew the brooch was not simply part of a royal collection. A royal collection means personal and official pieces kept by the family, often used for ceremony, memory, and public meaning. When the sealed velvet case was placed before them, Catherine looked at William first. The prince did not touch it. He only stared, and his silence told everyone in the room that the piece still hurt. Camilla had not been present for the first part of that ceremony, but her name entered the room soon after. According to a documented account later shared in a private palace briefing, she asked Charles whether she could wear Diana's brooch at the coming state banquet as a gesture of unity. The queen consort believed the jewel could show that old divisions had finally settled, but Catherine saw the request differently. To her, unity could not be made by taking another woman's pain and pinning it proudly before the world. William spoke to Charles that same evening. The prince told the king the brooch should remain unworn until he personally decided its place in Diana's legacy. Charles listened, but he did not promise. That silence wounded Catherine more than a refusal. She understood Palace hesitation. She understood careful words. But this was different. The monarch knew the object was sensitive, and still he left the door open. Catherine learned of Camilla's request through Sophie, who repeated the details from the recorded conversation kept by a senior aide. The princess felt disturbed, not because Camilla wanted dignity, but because the queen consort seemed ready to borrow it from Diana. William left the discussion visibly shaken, and Catherine watched him carry the pain without complaint. That was why the banquet became unbearable. When Catherine saw the brooch on Camilla's gown, she knew the private warning had been ignored. Charles had stayed silent. The queen consort had gone forward. William had been forced to face his mother's memory in public. So when Catherine rose from her chair, it was not impulse guiding her. It was the memory.
Learn when I hope to God King Charles leaves. Please, God. Or the devil, or whatever. He needs to go. Look what he's done to William Cater. Look what he's doing. He's ruining it for him. I mean, he's ruining the whole thing for William Cater. People don't even want the monarchies anymore. They don't want kings and queen anymore. I don't think people want William and Katie anymore. The way it's going, the people are just going to say we don't want any of them. Like with the government. Like with Labour, we don't want anyone in Labour. We don't want Andy Burnham, he could do one. I want Rupert Lowe. I'm voting 100% for Rupert Lowe. Because he's the only one, he's the only hope we have. He's the only hope England has of having some sort of proper change. And he is going to have to think about, for himself, putting English people to safety, why the country gets sorted out. Why have all these people get removed? Because we are going to have to bring what you call army soldiers down onto the land. To remove, well, how do we remove millions of people? Without harming anyone, or, well, literally without trying to harm anyone, like you're saying, like, basically handcuffing, putting them in handcuffs, putting them into cell things, and then transporting them to somewhere, because we can't have them all in. No, William, we cannot do this to the country, William. Your mother Princess Diana would be in shock. I mean, it had already started to change sort of thing when Princess Diana was here. But change, my good God, Princess, she would be shocked in the change, what really is. Yeah, well, it is pretty sad. I mean, that's why I actually still have a soft spot for Harry a bit, because a lot of people call Harry, but yeah, Meghan, I think so, yeah, because I think she's a bit of a witch as well. To be honest with her, she's a witch a bit like Camilla.
of a promise broken. The room did not erupt. It froze. Catherine did not shout. She did not tremble. She simply looked across the table at Camilla and asked one question that cut through every title, every rank, every practiced smile. Why are you wearing it? The words were quiet, but they landed like a verdict. In that instant, the banquet became a family reckoning. Catherine remained standing while the service stopped around her. A state banquet, in plain terms, is one of the monarchy's most formal dinners, held to honor important foreign guests and show the strength of the crown. That was why her decision carried such force. She was not interrupting a private meal. She was halting a carefully staged symbol of national dignity, and everyone in that room felt the danger of it. Camilla tried to answer with royal calm. She lifted her chin, looked toward Catherine, and began speaking as if the brooch was only part of her evening dress. But her voice tightened halfway through the sentence. The queen consort knew the guests did not understand the full meaning of the jewel, yet the people who mattered did. Catherine knew, William knew, Charles knew, and that made her composure feel thin, almost fragile. William rose slowly beside Catherine. The prince did not speak over his wife, and he did not try to soften her words. He simply stood close enough for the room to understand that she was not alone. His face carried the pain he rarely allowed anyone to see. This was his mother's memory being handled in public, and he could not pretend it was just an unfortunate choice. Diana's name was not said aloud, but it filled the silence between them. Charles leaned toward Camilla and told her quietly to remove it. The king did not raise his voice, but the command still cut through the table. Camilla hesitated. Just one breath, one pause. Yet that pause changed everything. Catherine saw it, and her grief sharpened into disbelief. William saw it, and his jaw locked. The monarch saw it too, and his face darkened, because hesitation now looked like defiance. Catherine wanted dignity. She also wanted truth. That was the battle inside her. Part of her wanted to step back, sit down, and protect the evening from scandal. Another part knew that silence would turn Diana's pain into decoration. So she held Camilla's gaze and refused to move. Camilla finally reached for the brooch, but the damage had already spread through the room. The queen consort's hand shook slightly, and the tiny movement said more than any apology could have said. She was exposed before guests who had come to see royal unity, not a wound reopening in real time. Anne stepped toward Charles with a face carved in cold certainty. The Princess Royal did not comfort him. She warned him. This was no longer about jewelry, she said in a low voice. This was about judgment. And once Anne named the real problem, the palace stopped treating the banquet as an incident and began treating it as a crisis of authority. Behind Catherine's quiet stand was something the palace could not ignore: moral authority. She had no crown yet, no throne, no final signature over royal protocol. But in that room, Catherine held something stronger than procedure. She held the emotional trust of William, the memory of Diana, and the public image of a future monarchy that could not survive appearing cruel. Charles understood the shift before anyone had to say it. The king still held the crown, and the crown means the legal and public authority to lead the monarchy. But authority inside a family can move before any title changes. That night, power did not sit only with the monarch. It stood with Catherine, because she had defended a memory the country still carried. And William stood with her, because he knew silence would have looked like betrayal. Catherine sat in a side room afterward, hands folded, face calm, heart still burning. She refused to soften what she had said. The princess knew the palace would worry about appearances, guests, headlines, and protocol. Protocol simply means the strict rules of royal behavior at official events. But to Catherine, the deeper rule was human. Diana's legacy could not be treated like a styling choice. It could not be borrowed for comfort. It could not be used to make old pain look healed. William stood near the closed door, choosing every word before facing Charles. The prince did not accuse his father wildly. He spoke with restraint, but the hurt beneath his voice was unmistakable. He told the king that Catherine had protected the family, not embarrassed it. She had stopped one painful moment from becoming a permanent insult. Charles listened, and for once, the monarch had no easy answer. Anne stepped in with colder clarity. The Princess Royal supported Catherine without drama, warning Charles that symbols can wound more deeply than statements. A public speech can be corrected. A palace note can be rewritten. But a symbol, once seen, lives inside people's minds. Anne knew this family had survived scandal before, yet she also knew Diana's memory remained different. It was not only royal history, it was national grief. Camilla's team tried to contain the damage quickly. They framed the brooch as reconciliation, a gesture meant to show peace between past and present. But Sophie cut through that explanation with quiet force. The trusted confidant reminded them that reconciliation cannot be forced on the grieving. If William had not agreed, if Catherine had not accepted it, then the gesture was not unity. It was pressure dressed as grace. Charles looked down at the notes placed before him, then pushed them away. The king knew a palace asset review, a check of who accessed royal items and who approved their use, could expose more than anyone wanted. Still, he ordered it. Every piece linked to Diana had to be traced. Every approval had to be named. That order changed the mood instantly, because now the question was no longer why Camilla wore the brooch, it was who allowed it to happen. By midnight, the palace corridors were no longer quiet with ceremony.
Why did she put
They
it
were
on?
quiet with fear. Aides moved without speaking. Doors closed softly. The banquet had resumed in appearance only, but everyone knew the real event had already ended. Camilla had removed the brooch, Catherine had not returned to her original seat, and Charles was facing a truth he could no longer delay. Charles gave the private order with a voice that left no room for argument. Diana's personal jewelry archive had to be reviewed before any future use. A jewelry archive, in simple words, is the guarded record and storage of royal pieces, showing where they are kept, who may access them, and when they can be worn. The king knew this mattered, because Diana's pieces were not ordinary palace items. They carried grief, public memory, and William's deepest family wound. Catherine sat away from the main table, feeling no victory at all. The princess had stopped the banquet, but stopping it had also dragged Diana's memory into a place of whispers, panic, and damage control. She had wanted respect, not spectacle. She had wanted the brooch protected, not turned into the center of a royal crisis. William stayed close to her, and the prince understood that her strength was costing her more than anyone could see. Camilla sat alone after the door closed behind her. The queen consort stared at the empty place on her gown, where the brooch had been pinned, and that blank space felt louder than the jewel itself.
In the
She had wanted the
personality
piece
in
to
the
speak
way
of
she is, probably a bit
acceptance.
like Princess
Instead,
Diana in them
it had
ways.
spoken of
I
hurt.
don't mean the look,
She had
I
wanted
mean
to
the
appear secure.
personality thing.
Instead, the night
Yeah,
had left her
Princess Diana was.
exposed,
Kate is a bit
questioned,
same.
and painfully aware that some symbols
I'm
refused
going to
to
say
obey
she
the person wearing
symbolises a
them.
bit of
Palace
Princess
staff prepared a
Diana.
controlled explanation for guests,
A lot,
but no
actually.
careful sentence could erase the moment at the table. A controlled explanation
Princess
means
Catherine
a short
resembles
official
Princess
reason,
Diana a lot,
shaped to
actually.
calm people,
A lot.
without revealing the full conflict. Charles knew such words might protect the evening, but they could not protect the family from itself. The king took the access file, read the approval chain, then
And that's
set
what
it
should be
down without
displayed to the
speaking.
public.
William saw the same
Some
file
of it,
soon
not
after,
all of everything.
and his
I'm
expression
saying
changed.
some things. Obviously,
The prince had
some
expected
things will
one
be
private
private,
request,
I'm gonna say.
one poor decision,
But-
one mistake made under pressure. Instead, he learned the
Obviously,
brooch had
like a
passed through
museum,
more
like
hands than he
saying.
had imagined. That made the whole thing feel less accidental. It felt planned. It felt permitted. And that realization cut deeper. Catherine looked toward
It's
the
a
closed
public,
door
like, museum.
and made her own decision.
Like her
The
own,
princess
like,
did not
I'm gonna
ask
say
for
like
another
Princess
briefing.
Diana's own
She
Princess
did not
Diana's
ask
room.
for more palace language,
People can
more
remember
excuses,
Princess
or
Diana.
more protection from the truth. She asked
From
to
the
speak
truth,
to
yeah.
Camilla privately, without aides, without guards, without anyone turning pain into procedure. William heard the request and went still. Charles heard it and looked older than he had all evening.
Good.
Camilla heard it and lowered her eyes. And in that private meeting, the night finally stopped being about protocol and became painfully human. There were no aides in the room, no prepared lines, no royal mask strong enough to hide what the banquet had exposed. Catherine and Camilla faced each other